EURAXESS Smart Talks for Talents, your personal guide to research careers, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Hi, I'm Daria, a senior expert of the EURAXESS National Contact Point in Latvia.
And I'm Jovan, a teaching and research assistant from Serbia, and you're listening to EURAXESS Smart Talks.
EURAXESS is a unique pan-European initiative of the European Research Area, providing information and assistance services to researchers regardless of their career stage.
Backed by the European Commission and 43 European countries, it supports research mobility and career development while enhancing scientific collaboration between Europe and the world.
The title of today's episode is From Science to Startup, Inside Information. This is the second part of a two-part episode.
If you missed part 1, it is waiting for you on the EURAXESS portal and on your podcast application.
In part 1 of this episode, we heard insights and tips learned from Professor Milan Zdravkovic on the entrepreneurship initiative for young researchers within the EURAXESS Hubs project. We also heard Vaido Mikheim, a participant in the Hubs startup tour, who shared his perspectives on the Estonian startup ecosystem.
Are you interested in a career entrepreneurship? Let us talk smart and continue to explore this topic together. Today we have the honor to host Nobel laureate Dan Shechtman, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2011. Professor Shechtman discovered quasi-crystals. Today, his discovery is used for a variety of applications, beginning with steel armor and ending with non-stick frying pans. Professor Shechtman, who joined the Technion faculty in 1975, developed and taught technological entrepreneurship for decades, which is one of the most popular courses on campus.
Why is technological entrepreneurship more and more popular today? What can we do to encourage young scientists? How hard is it to succeed in this field?
Let us start smart with the best person to explain.
EURAXESS Smart Talks for Talents, your personal guide to research careers, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
Professor Shechtman, welcome. It is an absolute privilege to be talking to you today. Let us start from the very beginning. How old were you when you first got interested in science? And when did you know that you would like to make a career in science?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I had several periods in my life regarding science. When I was 7 years old, my grandfather bought me a wonderful present. It was a magnifying glass. And I was walking through the fields of my neighborhood. Now it's a big city, but at that time there were fields, and looking at everything small, flowers, insects, everything small. And I fell in love with the world of small things. Later on, fast forward, when I was doing my master's degree at the Technion in Haifa in Israel, they bought the first transmission electron microscope. And I became an expert on using transmission electron microscopy, usually what is called diffraction contrast, and became an expert in it to the extent that I could teach classes for doctorate students and postdoc students. But going back to your question, I did not want to become a scientist. I wanted to become an engineer. And this was based on a book that I read when I was young. The book is by Jules Verne, you may know him. One of the books he wrote is called Mystery Island. In the book, there is a group of 5 men stranded on an island. The island has everything but no people, and they create modern life at the time of Jules Verne. And the leader was an engineer, and that engineer could do and make everything. And I wanted to be like him. So after my military service in Israel, which is mandatory, I registered to the Technion, which is a school for engineers and scientists in Haifa, Israel. They accepted me and I studied mechanical engineering. 4 years later, I was a proud graduate of the Technion mechanical engineering with a certificate. And that year, there was a big recession in Israel and I could not find a job. By that time, I was already married and had some financial responsibility. And I said, well, I will continue to do my master's degree, receive some salary as a teaching assistant, TA, And in 2 years after my master's degree, I will find a job. And I did find a job. But during these 2 years, I fell in love with science and decided that I will not be a mechanical engineer. I want to be a scientist, and continued for my PhD in material science. Later on, I went for a postdoc in the United States for 3 years and looked for a position back in Israel. And again, at the Technion, they offered me a position of a lecturer, and I immediately took the position. And in 1975, I became a faculty. Over the years, I continued to go through the ranks and became a distinguished professor and retired. So, this is to answer you when I wanted to become a scientist. It was during the period of my master's degree that I did because I could not find a job. Hey, when you don't find a job, is it good or bad? Well, depends.
We would definitely want to hear how hard it is to be a scientist.
Okay, let me give you a philosophical answer. If you love something, it is never hard to do it. How hard is it to be married? Well, if you love somebody, it's wonderful. If you don't, then it's not done. So how hard is it to be a scientist? I enjoyed doing science. It was a great pleasure for me, and I did not use students to help me. Yes, I guided students, but I never asked them to help me with transmission electron microscopy. And I was like a postdoc. I prepared my specimens alone, but all by myself because I was doing a very good job. And I enjoyed every minute of it. Let me just illustrate it to you. What does it mean? When I was working on transmission electron microscopy, the microscopes were not as modern as today. Today, you see the picture in the microscope on a screen. But those days, we did not have screens. You had to look at a phosphorus screen within the microscope through binoculars. And in order to do that, the room had to be very, very dark. So I sat in a very dark room for many hours and enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoyed every minute of it. Looking at what's happening with materials, trying to understand what's going on, and so on and so forth. Sheer pleasure. So for me, science is great joy.
But during those days when you had such a strong opposition, like Linus Pauling, who told that there are no quasi crystals, only quasi scientists, but it's a pressure really for a scientist, no? I understand that with your positive attitude, probably it wasn't so bad, but still, how you cope with this?
Well, I am not you, and I am not afraid, and I will explain to you why. I knew that Professor Linus Pauling, he was really a great scientist, one of the greatest chemists of the 20th century. I knew he was wrong. So here you are going to fight a battle, and before you go on the arena, you know you will win. Wonderful, right? You know that you will win before getting there. Well, basically, he was wrong. I will not explain to you the basis of his mistake, but I understood it very well. Yes, it was, let's say that with Linus Pauling, I had 3 periods. Period one was when he just started with his attacks. And we had a lot of communication. I had a lot of communication with him. Everything was very polite, mostly in writing. We wrote to each other many, many times. And I sent him materials and he sent me his comments. And we met twice. Once we met in a dinner in a conference of the American Physical Society when they gave me an award. And the second time I came to his home in Palo Alto, California, and gave him a lecture of 1 hour to one person. There was one person in the audience. And I gave him the whole story. And at the end, he said, Dr. Shechtman, I don't know how you do that. He did not understand electron microscopy. And I said, Professor Pauling, if you ever agree with me, please don't keep it a secret. He said, yeah. I must add that we were always very polite to each other. There was no Of course, what you said is indeed he said on stages, but one he was always very polite, and so was I. So the arguments between us were purely scientific, but he did not scare me at all. So in the beginning, it was sort of a surprise that this great two-time Nobel laureate is against me. Then I started to enjoy it. And I enjoyed it because many people said, wow, what's going on there? Pauling and Shechtman are fighting there. I liked it. The Pauling and Shechtman are fighting there. I liked it. And then at the end, there's a third person. I felt sorry for him. I mean, he was really making a fool of himself, and he could not publish papers anymore. His papers were rejected, and so
When you were 41, you made your discovery, which resulted in you receiving the Nobel Prize. What led up to that moment?
I can tell you the following. It was in the afternoon, and I know every detail of that afternoon because I have a logbook. And in the logbook, every action that I do on the microscope is written down. So I know it was the afternoon. I know what I did that morning, totally different thing. So this is after lunch. I go back to the microscope, put a specimen that I have prepared, one of a series of specimens, and immediately I find something interesting. I do a diffraction pattern, and that diffraction pattern had tenfold rotational symmetry, which is impossible in periodic crystals, but it was clearly a crystal because it gives very sharp diffraction. So here is a crystal with forbidden symmetry. Turns out later on that it was fivefold, but I could not tell from the first sight. And I wrote in my logbook tenfold with 3 question marks. And then I said, okay, I think I know what it is. It is probably a twinned structure. Oh, anyway, twins in crystals are two different crystals that meet together in a special angle. Not any angle, very special angle. These are called twins. And I said, okay, I have seen it before, this tenfold rotation symmetry. It does not come from one crystal. It comes from many crystals over one on the other. I said, okay, I have to find the twins, record them. Record means take a picture of them and forget it. It's not interesting. And I spent the whole afternoon looking for the twins. And in my logbook, you see all the experiments that I did to find the twins. I could not find them. There were no twins there. It was one crystal with tenfold rotational symmetry. This is the day of the afternoon of the discovery.
While you have a lot of experience in the field of science, you also have a lot of experience in the field of entrepreneurship. You created a course in technological entrepreneurship at Technion more than 30 years ago. So way before technological entrepreneurship was popular, before other people were speaking about it, before governments were funding this kind of startup. How and why did you develop this course?
When I was a student at the Technion studying mechanical engineering, the spirit of the Technion told us in many ways, you will be so good that when you graduate, everybody will want to hire you. And I said, well, that's wonderful, but what if I want to open my own technology business? The word startup did not exist. My own technology business. Why don't you teach me how to open my own technology business? So I went to some professors who could teach that, who could teach the law, or could teach the IP, intellectual property, who could teach some social effects, who could teach finances. I went to them and I said, why don't you teach me how to open my own technology business? They said, no. At the Technion, we teach principles. We don't teach how-to courses. Okay, this is when I was young. Later on, in 1986 to be exact, I became a full professor. And then I said, okay, now I can fulfill my old dream and learn from the experts how to open my own business. In order for me to do that, I opened the course and I publicized it. And indeed, it was the largest Technion course in its history. I ordered the largest hall of the Technion. At the time, it had 600 seats, and I opened the class for 600 students, hoping that 50 will arrive. But I thought, well, maybe. In the first day of the course, 800 students arrived, 600 that were registered for an academic point, and 200 that didn't register because they could not, just to listen. And they were standing in the back and they were sitting on the stairs. It was amazing. And so this was the opening. Now, I cannot teach technological entrepreneurship, but I know the people who could teach technological entrepreneurship, and I invited lecturers. So the first invited lecturers were the people who really established large companies in Israel. And they started from zero. What we call now a startup, that word did not exist at that time, but they created a technology business and started from zero. And I invited them, and they came willingly to speak to my students. Each class was 1 hour of speech, and the students were fascinated. So, and these were they started a startup, but now they are the tycoons. Each one of them worth many billions of dollars now. So, or at least in 1986. After the 3 or so, 4 of them arrived and gave talks to my class, anybody that I called and told him or her that I want him or her to give 1 hour to the class, they asked, yeah, what is this class? Who was there already? And he said, well, he was there. And he, oh, I'm coming. Because if these people were there, yes, I want to be on that list. This class from 1986, I conducted it for 30 years. 30 years. And everybody I called to give a talk came. Not only did they come, and they received nothing from it, except lunch with me if they want. and the book, I gave them a book as a present. Not only did they come willingly, they asked me if I need money for the class. They wanted to donate to money for the class. And I said, I don't need any money for the class. It's an academic course. I don't need anything. Finally, at the end, one of the speakers died, and he left me $15,000 in his will for the class, and he's still there. For 20 years later, I didn't use any of it. So it's like a donation to the Technion. Anyway, this was fascinating period, and I was student number 1 in all these lectures. So I learned how to open a startup.
Is it correct if I say that it somehow also was matchmaking event? They could find each other, probably have a good cooperation afterwards.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Israel is unique in many ways, but one of the ways is there's no ranking in Israel. Usually, this person is not more important than this person. And it's because, let me give you an example why it is like that. You know, everybody serves the military. So one is a commander, and then the other one is a foot soldier. Okay, so who is more important? The commander. Okay, fine. And then they go back to be civilized, and the foot student and the foot soldier is a professor, and the commander is a student. So who is more important? So, and these are real events. It's really so. So why am I saying that? Because all the lecturers, all the speakers in my class, after the class, students jump on them to the stage and want to talk to them. And they give their cards and they say, call me. Yes, I'd like to talk to you. Call me. And many call them, and they are open and answer. They feel that this is a wonderful contribution for the future of the country. You know, they do it for patriotic reasons that, hey, I am helping establishing a startup nation. And they did. Imagine that you're in an American university and you call Elon Musk to give 1 hour in your class. I doubt that he will come, but if he will come, he will not just stand there and give his card and say to every student, call me. It doesn't work like that. But in my country, it does work like that.
While listening to you, I come to realize that a lot of ideas that are presently active in the EURAXESS Hub project, which is trying to better the European researching community in terms of entrepreneurship, talent, and many other things have previously, historically, existed in Israel on Technion, and that you started this entrepreneurial path in a sense that we know it today. There are probably a lot of other people who have also started it in different countries. But since you were one of the first to initiate something like this, could you give us a definition about how you see technological entrepreneurship? And do scientists and researchers have overlapping goals with entrepreneurs? Is it something that's similar?
Absolutely, yes. And in my country, this is a wonderful example. There are many examples of scientists who became entrepreneurs. Many examples who became entrepreneurs, and they are both very good scientists and open very profitable startups. Some of them became unicorns. You know what unicorn is? Unicorn is a private company that was more than $1 billion. Not public company, private company, worth more than $1 billion, and there are many in Israel. And many of them are scientists. And they probably stopped doing science at some point, but maybe not. Maybe some of them still continue. So yes, scientists with good ideas could become entrepreneurs. And in my country, the spirit of entrepreneurship is thriving. It is bubbling, and it's based on several effects that build on one another, build upon each other. I can mention it to describe the Israeli environment on this. Number one, Israelis are well connected to each other because they were in high school together, in university together, or in the military unit together, or live in the neighborhood, and people talk. There's a lot of communication. This is number one. Number two, we have very good universities. We educate very good technologists and scientists. So in Israel, the level of academia is quite high and pretty good. On top of them, there is an entrepreneurial spirit. Israelis are very active, and in Israel, you can call everybody and talk to him or her. I have a little project now that I do with a colleague of mine, and he would call the office of the minister and say, "I want to talk to the minister. When can we talk?" Things like this. So, and it's possible. Number three, over time, many companies in the world, large companies, the largest companies in the world, establish R&D centers in Israel. R&D, research and development centers in Israel. They develop their products in Israel. First was, I think, Intel. Intel products are designed in Haifa by Technion graduates. It's as simple as that. They produce some in Israel, Intel, but most of it in Vietnam, China. But the brains are in Israel. But not only, Intel was first, but now every company that we may name, IBM, Microsoft, Google, technological companies from Europe, car companies, all the car companies, they all have development centers in Israel. So what happens now? The bad side of it is that they suck the brains to their development centers. This means higher salaries. Another aspect is the military service. Military service today is people sitting in front of screens and designing and so on. And so very many young people in the forefront of the cyber war, but cyber war is also used for civilian. It's cyber war and cyber defense. If you know how to defend military assets from enemies, you know how to defend the bank from people who want to penetrate the system on the cyber world. So it's all engaged together. And so there are many young people, many, tens of thousands of them, who emerge from the military service with fantastic knowledge. They can open startups, and many of them do. Or if they don't do, they work for a startup.
Tell us, please, what could be the message for young researchers who are listening to our podcast? What should they do, or what knowledge should they obtain? What they can do right now? What could be your message to them?
We start with what does it take to become a good scientist? My advice to young people who want to become good scientists is the following. In order to succeed in science, you have to know a lot about all sciences. It means you have to know enough mathematics, enough computer science, enough physics, enough chemistry, enough thermodynamics, enough biology. You have to know. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but you have to understand all sciences. But on top of that, find something that you like and become an expert in it. Whatever you want. Find something that you like, but try to be in that something number one. Number one in your class, number one in your school, number one in your city, number one in the world. And today, it is possible because information is available everywhere. When I was young, I read the encyclopedia. My knowledge came from encyclopedia. I have all the encyclopedias that one could have in Hebrew and Encyclopedia Britannica. Volumes upon volumes. Nowadays, who looks at that? Nowadays, everything is on the internet. So today, it is very easy to become an expert in something. Also, professors are approachable. You can knock on the door of a professor and ask hey professor, when can I talk to you? I'm very interested in thermodynamics and I want to consult with you on some aspect of thermodynamics. When can we do that? All right, you can do that today. And it's easy to do, and the professor usually are happy to find something who is interested in that subject. So become an expert in something you like, but try to be number one. And I tell the students, if you don't like science, fine. You want to play saxophone? Great. But try to be number one. Whatever you do, try to be number one in whatever you find something that you like, not necessarily science. This is about science. Now, about technological entrepreneurship. In order to succeed in technological entrepreneurship, you need the proper environment. It is not simple to become an entrepreneur in some countries, and I will not mention now the names of these countries, but the bureaucracy is such that if you do not bribe somebody, there is no chance that you can start something. So, how to succeed as an entrepreneur? There are several questions. Number one, you have to know what you want to make, hardware, software, whatever. You have to know the market. You have to know the competition. You have to know the direction in which the market is going. You have to know the price range. How much does it cost? If you have a product and want to sell it, how much will you charge for it? $20 per unit? But in China they make it for $5. So how can you compete? Okay, things like that. So you have to know the market. You have to know the price range. You have to know the law. Okay, you want to abide by the law. You have to fill in forms and do all this. And you have to know how to find partners. That's very important. Not, people are very friendly and they go to the beach together, three guys, and say, hey, let's open a company. Wonderful, wonderful. But they don't fit together because all three of them know the same thing. No, you want one who knows the technology, another one that knows finances, another one that knows the law, another one who is the locomotive. Okay, you have to create a good combination of people. Not necessarily your good friends or your good partners. So there are many issues, and in the lectures that are given in my class, the class continues, by the way, today. It's much smaller. and I don't run it anymore, but a colleague of mine, a very good friend of mine, runs it and continues with it. And each of these lectures give hints from the experience of people who made it big time. And they tell the students, do this and don't do that, okay? On every subject. And every lecture is a different subject, different focus, different subject. So there are many aspects to it. And I think that I would recommend, if you don't have classes like this, like technological entrepreneurship, I recommend that a young man or woman who wants to start a business should consult with an experienced entrepreneur. Yeah, call him or her and they say, hey, I want to be a young entrepreneur. Will you talk to me? I want to learn from you. And I hope they will say yes. Why not? Let's have coffee.
So even in the age of technology, communication between people is much more important, even probably than it was some time ago. We still need to communicate.
Let me mention one thing about communication among people. In order to succeed in a technology business or a startup, it is not enough to be an expert in the field. You have to have emotional intelligence. You have to know how to talk to people, how to approach people. If you want positive response, emotional intelligence is also very important. If you look at people that succeeded in the world of technology and world of startups, most of them, if not all, have very high emotional intelligence. They knew how to approach people and look for money. Hey, you want somebody to give you this sum of money. Why would you want to do it to you? The man or woman who gives you the money wants to make sure that you deserve it. And yes, he or she believes that you will succeed. And this has to do with emotional intelligence. Very, very important in succeeding in business.
Thank you very much, Professor Shechtman. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was really inspiring, and I hope all the scientists, young scientists, or researchers who are experienced as well, will find a huge amount of very different and very interesting information, taking into consideration your huge experience in this field. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Thank you for listening to the EURAXESS Smart Talks podcast. For more information on EURAXESS, visit the EURAXESS portal. You will find more episodes of the EURAXESS Smart Talks podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
This episode was prepared by hosts Daria Aksenova and Jovana Rangelovic, audio engineer Pavle Draškovic, outreach manager Dina Sameret, production manager Moria Riha, editors Iser Per and Miroslav Trejanovic.
This episode is published under the Creative Commons CC BY license.
Until next time.